So the cool thing is that we have it done a little bit more professional, but we have some issues. We cannot update this region. The no data found message is not so nice. When you have a lot of data, then this the page has to wait when loading for this chart. It's not loaded asynchronously and so on. So we will handle it a little bit more professional. Um, let's check this example. That is the new code, and we create our plugin. Click on Shared Components, Plugins. But now we don't want to create from scratch. We make a copy of a plugin because all these attributes that we have added in our second chart plugin, we will not add again. So we will copy from application. And as you can see, we need to check here, yes, and call this plugin our third chart plugin. And then we click copy plugins. And now we have here our third chart plugin. Apex has changed the internal name a little bit because it's unique, or it has to be unique in this application. So we call it third chart plugin. Then you see the code is copied, our render function, our standard attributes, our custom attributes, and also the library has been copied. So we will make it a little bit more professional. We copy this code from the sample app. I know it's a little bit more code, but it's professional code. Or the best I can do at the moment. What is professional code? And when we scroll a little bit down, we have here also a render function. But this render function is much shorter than the render function from our second chart plugin. Okay, here are the same declarations for the attributes, but one is missing. I will show you later. And we have some more. We have a refresh ID because when we draw our chart container, then we use this static ID and add here a div to our page when rendering the plugin. But this has to be a different ID than the Apex region that had been added to the page. But when we call some events like refresh to our plugin region on a page with dynamic actions, then we have to use the directly ID of the Apex region. And that's why we have here these two declarations. And we have another declaration, items to submit. In the plugins that we have built before, we have everything added to the render function. So everything is executed on server side directly when the page renders. So it uses the session states of the items. Here we have the option to use our chart asynchronously. So for example, when you have developed a page with some option items and you change these items and then you make a refresh event to our plugin, then these new values should be submitted. And that's why we use items to submit. Because we have this here, we have to told Apex to use these items. So here, and we create our plugin. We have to check these items to submit. Sorry, I was on the wrong page. Now I copied the code to the right page. This is the code of my example plugin. Sorry for that. And now we can finish, but there are other differences. So we have the items to submit. Then we add again our JavaScript library. And now we don't put the JavaScript code into PL SQL. We load this JavaScript code also from a file that we have uploaded here into the plugin. And I will do this at the moment. About the JavaScript code, we talk a little bit later. Now we add here the JavaScript code. And we have two files. We have the full developed JavaScript and a min file. So it's made smaller to save data loading when executing this plugin. And Apex has a cool feature. You can tell Apex with check to add minified that it should use the min script file, so it adds automatically here this min to the file name, and in debug mode it loads the full file, so it's much more easier for app developers to debug. Then I told you we add this this region, and then we add here the JavaScript code. But we do not directly add the JavaScript code. We just call a JavaScript that is inside our script file and add all the options here with add value. And that's the render function. But now we have an Ajax function. And this Ajax function now produces our JSON, but it's called from the JavaScript. So it can be called multiple times, not only on page load, like in the plugins before, it can be called every time. So when we refresh the region, the Ajax function is called again. It produces a new JSON from our SQL statement, and then the chart refreshes. We use also here Apex execute, and we also use Apex JSON to create a JSON. And the cool thing is that when we close everything here and use not the club output from Apex JSON, the JSON is directly sent to the client after finished of this code. And now we can apply change. And when we go to our page, and when we go to our page, and we change the second to third. Oh, we have to change the attributes. Then the chart should still work. And you can see it's working. The cool thing is that we can now create a button, refresh. We can now add the dynamic action that refreshes our chart. And then we can load every time new data. I will show it to you. We will add here so we will add a random value from 1 to 10. And when we now here press refresh, then you can see we have randomized data, and every time we press on refresh, the region refreshes. And that is much more better than just to add these static charts, and every time when we want to have or want to see new data, we need to reload the page. So I would please you to use every time when you load data in your plugin, use an AJAX function. So now let's take a look into the JavaScript that we have used here. That is the script file. We have our Apex chart.js as function. I will please you to set here a version so that everybody knows what's the version. And this is util JSON. This util JSON you can download from my GitHub repository, and it has some helper functions. It checks if Apex is available, it handles debug for you, escape HTML, it adds a loading icon, so when we press refresh, that you can see this loading icon. It adds you a nice no data found message. I will show you. No data found. And when we refresh again, here comes our new data. So it's everything handled by this library. So please use this library. But at the moment, I will minimize this library. So as you can see in the PL SQL, we call this function apex.js dot render. Here are all our options set. And the first thing I do is to print, when debug is enabled in Apex, all these options. So app developers can see, okay, that is sent to the JavaScript. These options we add to a JSON, so we will not add all these options to every function. We just will add options, and then we have all values that we needed. Here is a getData function, and this is called at first. This getData function makes a little cleanup, so when we refresh, we just empty the region. Okay, we can make an update of the chart, but to make it a little bit easier, we just make a cleanup. Then it calls to the loader so that the loading icon is shown. And then it calls a JavaScript API from Apex that is called apex server.plugin. This needs the AJAX ID of the plugin. This AJAX ID comes from here, Apex plugin get AJAX identifier. And it's the identifier for Apex that Apex knows, okay, that's this plugin and he wants to have data. We send the items to submit here. And then when this AJAX call is success, we can call another function or we make an error handling. Okay. For the refresh, we use this code. We bind the refresh event directly to our Apex region, and this also calls getData. When getData success, it calls the function renderChart. Here we have the function renderChart. It also prints debug when debug is enabled, and then if data is sent to here, it produces the chart like we did it before in PL SQL, but we have here done it in JavaScript. We have also here this show data JSON block, and we use also in JavaScript the escape HTML. So when escaping is enabled, we just print this label as text. When it's disabled, we can print it as HTML. If no data is sent to the client, we print our no data found message. And then we just stop the loading item. And that's it. You see, it's not so hard to produce a real good plugin with asynchronous data loading and refresh, no data found, escaping of JavaScript attacks, and so on. In my sample app, you see this same plugin with different Ajax functions. The first was with Apex Execute. The second is the old one with getData2. The third one is made with Apex JSON. So the SQL statement is directly executed with Apex JSON and produces JSON. And the last one uses Oracle JSON. So here in the SQL query, JSON is directly produced. What the differences between these data loading functions are described here on this page. This video just exists for Apex Execute, and I think when you will use the other options here, then you just can check the Ajax function and can compare these. But the JavaScript I used for this for these four plugins are the same. So just the Ajax functions have changed. Okay? So have fun building your plugins.